Maruti Suzuki makes one of the top selling sedans in India, the Dzire, which have been ruling the hearts from quite some time now. Today we compare it against the new Tata Tigor to find out if this car has what it takes to snatch all the attention from its rival. And in this comparison test, we will be driving around the diesel version of these cars.
If you're planning to sell your old car first before planning on any of these two cars, then you should consider Cars24. Visit any of their 50 branches across India and sell your car at the best price. Not only that, Cars24 will instantly transfer the money into your bank account and will also take care of all the paperwork, including the RC transfer. So do check out Cars24 today. Well, so the Tigor's cabin might not have that same essential flamboyance that the Desire's cabin displays, but that said, it is a solidly built cabin and it really is a cabin which has its own charm because everything really is made from the finest of materials. The top of the dashboard, the top of the door panels here, and even the center console is really made from solid materials and bolted together very well. In terms of equipment, you get all the bells and whistles, and the switchgear is really nice to operate. The only downside, if I can say so, is the fact that the screen over here, the touch screen, is really very small compared to the Dzire, and in today's day and age it's something that Tata Motors should definitely improve. It is decent to operate, but it really does look very outdated and also looks a bit boring. But you also get these switches over here, which means that you can always use them. You don't have to constantly be using the touchscreen, and driving and using this system is quite okay. Well, one area where the Tigor is slightly behind the Dzire is in overall utility places, because the door bins are really very tiny. We could barely manage to fit these small piddly bottles inside these door bins. So yes, that's something that maybe Tata Motors should work on. Overall, there is some place over here where you can keep those odds and ends, and there's a big tray where you can keep those coins. And the glove box is of a decent size, but as I just said, because of those bottle holders, it is slightly behind the Dzire. Well, the first thing you will notice as soon as you step inside the front seats of the new Dzire is the fact that the steering wheel on this car now is a flat bottom one, and not only does it look sporty, it's also very nice and sporty to grip. It of course has this leather wrap around it, which really does offer you a very premium and a very sporty feel. What also adds to the sporty quotient inside the cabin is the fact that the center console is slightly tilted towards the driver's side, and that of course helps when you're driving and you have to use the infotainment system for the various maps, as well as the sound, as well as stereo on this car. And you also get very good seats in terms of comfort. These seats offer you very good support for the lower back, and the seat scope is both long as well as wide. And what that means is that if you are someone who is on the heavier side, just like me, these seats should be comfortable even on the longest of long journeys. Well, just like the Baleno, the new Dzire gets a touchscreen infotainment system. Well, but the Apple CarPlay and Android Auto aren't the only features which will impress you. What is most impressive is the fact that this car will also come with 2 airbags as well as ABS as standard, even on the base version. Yes, Maruti Suzuki will offer you safety kit even on the base versions of this car, and that really goes to show you their commitment towards safer cars for India. Well, so the back seat of the Tigor is a nice place to sit in, and the headroom is more than sufficient for someone who is my height, which for reference is 5'10", and as always I've adjusted the front seats for my height and my driving position. Now legroom is quite okay, it's not bad. Knee room also is pretty decent, but yes, compared to the Dzire, it's slightly behind in terms of knee room, but you won't really find too many reasons to complain. Where it is ahead of the Dzire is definitely in overall seat comfort. The seat scope offers you better comfort because the cushioning is excellent. Unlike the Dzire, which is slightly less in terms of cushioning, this one has ample support. In fact, you'll be sitting and thinking you're sitting in the sofa of your home. The under thigh support is excellent, backrest angle is very good, support for the lower back is very good, and it's a great place to be for those long trips. There is a bit of a lump in the floor panel, but it's not too much, so whoever's sitting here should have decent place to stretch his feet. You also get huge windows, which means that you don't feel claustrophobic inside this car, and the only thing it's missing is rear AC vents. That's something that the Dzire has, but the throw of air from the front ones is pretty good, so people inside the back seat over here should not find any reasons to complain. So who wins the battle of the rear seats? It's a tie, because that car has more knee room, but this car definitely has the more cushion in its seats. Well, so let's talk about the boot space on the Tigor. This car is not only better than the Dzire in terms of sheer boot capacity, but it's the best car in its category, the compact sedan space that is, when it comes to boot capacity, because this one has 419 liters, 419 in terms of boot space. And as you can see, the aperture is nice and wide. It's a nice and deep boot. And the best part is that when you load it up, it's actually 419, unlike a lot of other manufacturers where it says something and you can't really fill up the boot, because this car has these gas fill struts which help it close the lid and open it, unlike other cars which have that clamp like design. And of course, if you put in those big boxes or those big luggage pieces and try and close the boot, those clamps get in the way, which also get in the way of the Dzire. Remember, this one has these gas fill struts and they aid luggage carrying capacity even further. So full marks to Tata Motors for giving the Tigor great attention to detail. Well, as soon as you start driving off the Maruti Suzuki Dzire, you get a strong sense of deja vu, and that's because this car has the same engines as the outgoing car. You get the same 1.2 litre petrol and the same 1.3 litre diesel, but that's not a bad thing, because those engines were pretty good all-rounders and were very good in terms of both refinement as well as overall fuel efficiency. You get these nice and comfortable seats, you get this huge glass area, and visibility really is very good because the A-pillar here isn't very thick. You can easily look around it, and the clutch as well as the gearbox and steering wheel are really very light, which means that maneuvering this car in the city is really a very breezy affair. Well, not only is it a comfortable car to drive in the city, even when you take it out on the highway, this car does offer you a very comfortable ride. Maruti Suzuki engineers have worked very hard on the suspension and have retuned it slightly, and this suspension does soak in the bumps very well, even at faster highway speeds. And this car does offer you good stability as well when you are doing speeds of about 100 or 110 kph on the highway. This car does have a solid and reassuring ride, so Maruti engineers have worked hard on improving the suspension as well. Today's comparison is about diesel engines. We're not talking about petrol cars, we're talking about the diesel versions of both these cars. We'll talk about petrol cars in some other video, but today, as I said, it is all about diesels. And the Tigor diesel engine clearly has the advantage over the Desire's engine, because this one feels a lot more refined and a lot more quieter as soon as you drive it off from cold. And that's probably because this is a more modern engine. This one is a recent engine from Tata Motors, while the Desire's engine has been around for nearly a decade now, and we've seen it on a lot of cars in the Maruti Suzuki stable. Well, where this engine is also slightly better than the Desire's engine is in responsiveness, and unlike the Dzire, which needs 2000 RPM to get going, this one starts to feel a lot more responsive from about 1500-1600 RPM, so it feels a lot more responsive when you're driving it in the city. You don't have to constantly keep changing gears, unlike the Dzire, to keep it in the right power band. And as I just said, it definitely feels a lot more easier to drive in the city and also a lot more relaxing than the Desire's engine. But talking about shifting gears, the Tigor's gearbox is a nice and slick unit. The gear shifts are short and they feel pretty sporty. The clutch also doesn't feel like you're driving the clutch of a diesel car. It's really light and it's got a very linear feel, so it really feels like you're driving a petrol. And that, along with the fact that you have this very light steering wheel, it's a very light and easy to operate steering wheel, means that this car is very well suited for driving in the city. It's a very relaxing car for driving in the city, because you also get these comfortable and nicely cushioned seats. So it's a great car for those city commutes, and it's also a great car for those long highway trips, because it is a car which offers you very good relaxation. Well, people who buy these kind of cars are people who are not interested in sporty handling or keen handling and stuff like that. So in that sense, the Tigor plays its role pretty well, because the steering wheel is pretty light. It doesn't have too much feel in it, but that's quite okay, because average buyers will not be complaining about it. People who buy these cars want a light steering wheel so that they can park it into tight spaces without any issues, and that's something that this car does pretty well. Overall visibility also is pretty good. Of course, you get that sloping notchback design at the back, which means that visibility isn't as good as the one on the Dzire, but still it's quite okay. Where it has the advantage over the Dzire is the fact that it has big rear view mirrors, which give it a very nice depth of field, and you also get a good view of the road ahead. Talking about driving this car on the highway, the Tigor has the clear advantage when it comes to highway speeds, because this car's suspension really soaks in the bumps very well. And not only that, it feels a lot more stable and reassuring and confidence inspiring when you're driving it on the highway. In fact, this car really doesn't feel like you're driving a compact sedan or a car which is under 4 meters in length. The ride comfort is so good that it feels like you're driving a proper big sized saloon, and that's something which goes to show you the kind of engineering that Tata Motors have managed to put into the suspension setup on the new Tigor. So overall, the Tigor might be slightly low in terms of the overall power output. This car develops about 70 bhp to the 74 of the Dzire, but that said, you will never really be found wanting for more power, because the gearbox has very nicely spaced out ratios. You don't need to change it constantly, and the power delivery is more than adequate, and a lot of that power comes lower end in its rev band, making it a nice car, an easy car to drive, and a car which is also pretty relaxing. Well, so who is the winner of today's comparison? Well, clearly if you're buying a diesel car, then the Tata Tigor has the edge over the Maruti Suzuki design. Why is that? Well, simply because this car's engine is a lot more refined, it's a lot more responsive, and definitely easy to drive in the city. It also has the bigger boot, and it has more comfortable seats, which make it a better car for those long highway trips. Also, the cabin feels better put together, and the sturdy build quality is something which will exude a lot of confidence when you take it out for those long trips with your entire family. But that's not all. It's also good value for money, because it is loaded with features, and if you're in the market for a diesel car, it is clearly the Tigor which has the advantage. In petrol format, the Dzire still is the king, but in the diesel version of this comparison, it is the Tigor which has the clear advantage and is the winner of today's comparison. It's bye for now, and hope to see you soon.